Welcome to some more Alpha 17 talks. So today I wanted to cover something that is a lot less sexy than some of the videos being shown, but something that I think is, I would say it's critical to the success of Alpha 17 and something that has actually got the potential to be very, very cool. So Kinyajuu came out about a week ago with some information about the new buff and effect and item progression mod systems. Now, what does that really mean? Well, one of the changes they're doing is that they are totally recoding the backend when it comes to handling item buffs and, as I mentioned, perk skills and attributes and item mods. And how does that affect you? Well, that's a good question. I mean, a lot of this is going to be very technical and it's not going to be very sexy, but it shows that some of the work that has been going on under the hood, that you won't visually see any major difference in the game, but you're going to see how it actually applies in the gameplay. So let's look at here a little bit of some of the list of events that can be used. So you have all these things that can be applied, and you look at them, and I'm not going to go through them one by one because I don't know half of them I do. But it shows there's a lot of events that can trigger. Okay, so fine. So here's some passive effects that Kinyajuu was showing. And you look at a long list of effects. So you see some of this one, which is like, well, elemental damage resist, max speed, traction, tank size, distraction radius, economic value, and just tons of them, right? Explosion radius. So what does that mean? Good question. Now let's look at some of the player effects. And you see again, another long list of things. Now they've mentioned that they can add on to these ones and make new ones. And he also mentioned that you can create and modify new variables that you like, which is good. Now you also have a lot of actions. Of course, you want to have actions to apply these different buffs. And here you see buff, add, remove negative ones, entity actions, screen effect actions, sounds, modify stats. Okay. Straightforward, right? Okay, well, how does this really make any difference in the game? Now, this is where he went into some of the basic stuff. So he details, say, the drunk buff. Okay, currently there is a drunk buff in Alpha 16 and early on, which of course, you get stun resistance, stuff like that, right? So he's showing some of these things, and I'm not going to go through it. But again, it shows how it's been built up. And here comes something which is part of the sexy bit. Now, let's say you want to have a laser sight for your gun. Well, this is something that we don't have previously. And if they wanted to make a laser sight, they would have to make a lot of custom code. Now, instead, well, this is what they're doing. They're making use of the current buff or effect or the item mod variables in order to create an effect, which is pretty cool, which means, it looks like they're multiplying the spread with a negative value, which means the spread goes down. Weapon handling goes up. And of course, it probably looks like there's some light value. Maybe there's even, I don't know whether there's any color. So you can imagine, well, now you can have a laser sight. We didn't have that before, but they're doing that mostly in the config. They're not doing that as custom code. Now, he also mentioned having a burning shaft mod. And so what's the burning shaft? I'm assuming it's having a weapon that is burning. And it mentions something about being a power attack. And this is obviously the one that he's doing right here. But it basically adds a buff on the target, which is presumably the one you're hitting, that starts burning. Pretty cool, right? And of course, it has some different values that it's going, and there's some special effect, etc. So you can imagine that you can add this on, let's say, a club. So not just having a torch that sets enemies on fire, you can have a club. You could effectively have a sledgehammer that is on fire, that sets other people on fire, and it doesn't require custom code. You could go in and add a weapon like that yourself, which you can't very easily do right now. And here goes through some of the entries that are on the entity class for player, and you can see all these things. And you go like, okay, how does this really matter? Well, one thing that was mentioned, I think, later in this thread is that, well, you could have a pair of sneakers that increases the passive effect of your walk and run speed. So let's say you put in a pair of high quality sneakers and now your walk speed is 1.75. Maybe your run speed is 1.5. So in other words, the sneakers, the shoes themselves, when you wear them, it increases your walk speed. Well, you could have a weapon that has a higher dismemberment chance. Or you could have an item that gives you some basic passive health regeneration. Maybe that's not something that you would assume it would be in the game, but you could have, let's say, you want to create some kind of health recharger. Something, of course, that fits into your type of game. Maybe that's a little bit high tech. But you could imagine that you have something like that. You put it on, maybe it heals 1 health point every 5 seconds. So it's a lot of these kind of things that you could imagine being done. And Kinyajuu shows something else. And again, he mentions that this is not something that is going to be in the game, but it's something that he's testing out. And it's a Riot Shield. Now, a lot of people have been mentioning that they want to have shields in the game. And here's Kinyajuu with the new effect buff system. He's actually implemented a Riot Shield. Now, of course, we don't know specifically how it works, but he says that it works great. And I'm assuming it allows you to do some kind of blocking from the front. And I'm sure that, as you mentioned, there's a sphere. So that's pretty cool, right? So it shows some of the things that can be done with the new system. And that's far beyond what we have currently. Now, I've made some basic modding videos previously where I made, say, some custom armor with a color tint and slightly different values for the armor. But you could imagine that now you have all these different things you can apply as well. Sneakers or boots that are more quiet maybe, or that allow you to walk or run faster. Maybe some clothes that increases your stealth. Maybe a helmet that reduces your stun or dismemberment chance and stuff like that. And of course, you have all the weapon mods. Having a burning club, wouldn't that be awesome? Burning sledgehammer. I mean, that would be really cool. And of course, the community always comes up with a lot of good ideas. And here's one mentioned by Aldranon on having on self-killed. And as Kinyajuu mentioned, you could have a vampiric weapon. That would be pretty cool. Or a weapon that hurts you when you kill. Well, I'm not sure whether you want to have that. Maybe it's a spike club with a spike handle. So every time you swing it, you do 1 damage to yourself or something. Now, so what the end result is going to be for Alpha 17 as a whole, it's a little bit hard to know. But if nothing else, it gives them the ability to add things that are really cool, that can really affect gameplay. And probably a more important part is that it allows the community at large to add and modify things on their own without having to go into modding tools like SDX, etc. in order to make changes. Because that's something that normal players aren't going to be touching the config files. There is a segment of players, especially server owners, who do tweak server settings. And then, of course, there's the diehard modders who make wonderful creations, but they're using mod tools because that's the only way to get access to some of this underlying code. This way, a lot of these things will be exposed in the config files and allow them to just modify the XMLs as opposed to modifying the code. Now, just a final thing that came up here. So Fatal on the forums also mentioned about things were progressing pretty well. So one thing that I was asking about is the Jeep going to be multi-seat at release? And Fatal mentioned Jeep passengers not likely. But the other is possible, and that refers to the gyrocopter. So hopefully, cross my fingers, what this means is that at least when Alpha 17 comes out, the gyrocopter will be part of it. The Jeep should be in there, but maybe not the passengers. One thing I was also asking whether they're going to make that configurable, because I don't mind if they allow just one player, but give me a config so that if I want to on my server, I can add, let's say, 2 or 3 slots. And yes, maybe it's going to look terrible. Maybe the other character models are going to be flying all over, but maybe that's something the server owner can live with, assuming it's not too bad. But at least that gives us the option to just tweak the config settings and play with it, as opposed to not being able to do it because it's been hard-coded. But anyway, I wanted to cover this because there's always a lot of focus on what's visually shown, and personally, I wish they would show a lot of these things instead. Make some videos of some of these underlying engine changes and how it actually works in the game. You could imagine, for instance, Kinyajuu was showing the laser sight XML, showing the Riot Shield. Show that in a video. Show the XML and mention that this is what they do. Maybe a quick walkthrough of some of the different lines, even if it's just 5 minutes. Show how the laser sight would work in the game. How would it look? Same with the Riot Shield. Show how it would look. Maybe it doesn't have a very nice model because that's not part of the release. Use some other model. and just show how it would actually apply as an example of things that maybe not necessarily are in the game yet, but are possible with the new underlying engine changes. I think that's something which would generate a lot of goodwill from the community, because a lot of people are just saying that I need more information, I want to hear more what's happening, and then they see a video and they go like, well, I don't see enough. I mean, I see some basic graphics and things changing, but I don't see the underlying gameplay and how that is being improved. So I think something like this would be maybe a short developer series, have a 5-minute video every week or two covering more than just the graphics, cover some of the underlying engine changes as well of what the impact is. I think that would be really good. But anyway, that's my take on it. I'll see you next time.
Special thanks to the great patrons supporting the channel. If you would like to join the vetted community and support these videos, do follow the Patreon link.